Welcome everyone, and thank you for attending this evening's webinar. My name's Talia Newton. I'm the Climate Emergency Project Officer at Basco Shire Council, and I'll be your MC for tonight's webinar. I'd like to start tonight by acknowledging the Bunurong and the Gunai peoples as the traditional owners and custodians of the lands and waters that I'm on, and I'm sure many of you are too. I'd like to pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging, as well as Aboriginal elders of other communities who might be joining us tonight. If you're joining us from elsewhere in Victoria, feel free to introduce yourself and acknowledge the country you're joining us from in the chat. Tonight's webinar, Water and Greening, is part of a series of webinars that Bass Coast and South Gippsland Shire Councils have partnered with Renew for across 2025. Renew has been working in the sustainability space for over 40 years as an independent, not-for-profit body with a mission to inspire, enable and advocate for people to live sustainably in their homes and communities. This webinar and all our other webinars will be recorded and made available on the CAP, the Community Action Portal, for future viewing. The 2025 webinars are designed to equip you with the information and knowledge to make your homes more comfortable, energy efficient, cheaper to run, and more environmentally friendly to live in. So now, without any further delay, I'd like to welcome our expert presenter for tonight, Michael Hughes. Mike discovered permaculture over 10 years ago after being inspired to leave the mining industry, slow down and tread lighter. He renovated his house as an owner-builder, became vegan, completed a permaculture design certificate, and started Let's Grow Shopping, whose goal is to help others become the change they wish to see in the world. Mike opens his demonstration garden during the Sydney Edible Garden Trail, and his home has been featured during Sustainable House Day. He's also appeared on Gardening Australia. Welcome, and over to you, Mike.
Thanks a lot for that. Okay, yes. So today I'm talking on behalf of Renew. And I just wanted to say that the online articles from Renew are a great source of information. I've been using them for my own sort of renovations and information for doing my own garden through the years. So I can recommend checking them out if you get a chance. Another great resource is the federal government's Your Home Guide. I was using this 10 years ago when I was doing my house. It's a free online resource explaining the basics behind a sustainable home. And it covers much of the same content we're going to discuss tonight. There's quite a lot of information in this presentation, and we've got to move through it fairly quickly. And there'll be resources coming up as we go through the presentation that help you dive into certain topics. So today we're going to cover water in the landscape and something called water-sensitive urban design. And then we'll focus in on the house and the garden with rainwater management and using plants to help with climate control. We'll also look at some strategies for cleverly distributing stormwater and keeping your garden hydrated, which also points towards fire-wise gardening. And we'll have a look at some different aspects of that as well. Okay, so water-sensitive urban design. This is all about becoming more sensitive to the natural water cycle in urban environments. Without water, nothing lives, including us. And as we've seen with the floods recently around the country, water can destroy as easily as it creates life. And so we need not to underestimate it. Our urban designs are having negative impacts on the landscape, and water-sensitive urban design is a step in the right direction to remedy that. It basically reduces pollution in the waterways, it reduces flood risk, and it increases the cooling effect of transpiration, whilst replenishing the natural groundwater. And to explain that, I'll look at this diagram on the left there. You've got the forest. Rain falls on the forest, and up to 85% of that water is actually evaporated or transpired back into the atmosphere. So this creates a cooling effect and actually creates more rain. Only about 15% infiltrates down to the water table and very slowly percolates down to the river and to runoff. If you look at the right-hand side of that diagram, current urban land, only about 15% of the rain evaporates back into the atmosphere. It's totally the opposite to the forested environment. There's not much cooling effect, and there's no increase in precipitation. About 85% of the water hits hard surfaces and is directed as quickly as possible into the stormwater system and runs off. There's nothing left for the water table, and there's flood risks because everything is poured into there in a very short space of time and very quickly overwhelms the river. And it's full of all the detritus from the road and all the other pollution that we leave behind. So it's quite important if you're designing your own house to look at what happened to the water on your site and in your general area before there were houses or development. It could be that there were streams actually running through the property you plan to build on. So it's good to know where they were, because the undersurface rocks will be set up to transport water down those channels. On the surface, you can have a look at where the water enters and leaves your property and in what kind of volume. And the easiest way to do that is literally getting out with an umbrella in pouring rain and having a look at what happens and taking photos and hopefully map where it's actually flowing. Where are the boggy spots? Where are the dry spots? So the main overall principle is to slow water down, soak it up and let it sink in, which is essentially what the forest does. You're wanting to make the water work harder before it leaves your property. Gravity is your friend in this. Obviously, the pattern for water is that it flows from uphill to downhill. And so you want to take advantage of that where you can and not use pumps to move it around. It's very property specific. So the basic premise there on the right-hand side is a champagne tower. If you consider that the water coming into your property is the champagne bottle, your land is all the glasses, and the table is the river. Current urban design is about removing all the glasses, pouring the champagne straight on the table, and getting it to run off as quickly as possible. Water-sensitive urban design is trying to place all these glasses in such a way that we catch everything and nothing finds its way to the table. So with these unique challenges, being property specific, like every piece of land is different and your house is placed differently on that block of land to everyone else, even your next door neighbor. It's great to go and look at open house events such as Sustainable House Day. You can go to edible garden trails or other open garden events, chatting to the neighbors, friends and family. And what I've found is they generally don't have exactly the same issue that you have, but what I've found is that I learn bits of the puzzle with everyone I speak to, and gradually I can put together a plan that works for me. And that word there, the plan, it's quite important to have a plan, particularly for stormwater and what you're going to do with it. There are obviously mains water, stormwater, grey water, and irrigation that you can sort of have some influence over. And it's stormwater that generally causes all the issues. Pipes are a real pain to move once you've constructed everything else. And plumbers aren't cheap. So if you're going to get them to dig holes, they're very expensive. So I'll just grab a pointer and I'll show you. This is a picture of my backyard. This is the back of our garage. So water falls on the garage roof, comes off through the gutters into these pipes into a 10,000 litre water tank. The overflow is there right at the front that comes off down the wall, and I've put a pipe under the path. It comes back up again into this raised garden bed. This pipe down the left here is on the dead horizontal with loads of holes drilled into it. So all the holes leak at the same time. So the pipe fills up and then all the holes leak at the same time. And so the whole length of the garden bed gets watered all at once. Water seeps into the garden bed. Any excess comes out of two holes in the bottom here and goes through the path, which is just wood chips, so nice and permeable, water flows through it. I put a pipe in this wall of the pond. At the low, there's rock underneath the wood chip, and so the pipe is at the lowest point in that rock. So the excess water flows through the pipe into the pond, fills the pond up. The pond overflows into this garden bed. This garden bed gets saturated and it leaks out and goes off to the right into my bananas. And so all of those garden beds, ponds, are all the champagne glasses in my champagne tower, trying to hold on to as much water as I possibly can. We'll talk about the home. So following the Northern Rivers floods, the New South Wales Resilient Homes Programme released this detailed flood resilience guide for new and existing homes. And it's really a challenge to provide a one-size-fits-all solution because, like I said before, the shape of your land, or the contours of your land are different, and the way your house is placed on it is different to everyone else. And you might think that flood damage is only relevant if you live down there in the floodplain where it's actually flooding. But what I discovered during the heavy rains about 2 or 3 years ago here is that real implications for living on the slopes above the river as well. Where we are, we're high up on slopes, but there is next to no soil, and it's not far till you reach bedrock. So everyone built their house on a single level, and the back of the house, generally speaking, is about, head height off the floor. And so a really common house reno is to dig out underneath your house and put the rumpus room and laundry under there, or a granny flat. And then what happened in the really heavy rain, the water soaked into the slightly uphill land through the rocks, and then came in the wall underneath that faces underneath the house, that faces the rock underneath the house. So that wall needs to be literally watertight to keep it dry in the heaviest downpour. Water will always follow the easiest way to go, and that way is a lot easier if there's a big living room there rather than a lot of rock it has to go through to go round your house. So yeah, it's worth paying real attention to where the water flows and dig some holes before you start doing underground renovations. Another little tip for building a new house is just putting large roof eaves to keep the ground immediately around the home drier. And we'll talk a bit later about using the garden landscaping to reduce the impacts of heavy rain. So one of the first things you can do with water in the home is basically do a water audit. This is a very warts and all look at how you use. It's quite sobering most of the time. It also helps you work out ideally how much you need to harvest. If you think about grey water in the garden, there's a lot of habits that may be easier to change and be the largest water saving you can make. How much water you use on a weekly basis times by the amount of drought you have. So if I think around here it was about 6 weeks is the longest we ever really go without any rain at all. So I just worked out how much I use per week, times it by 6 weeks. That's how much water I need to save in my tanks so that I can go through a drought. And there's a couple of resources that you can use to help you work out how much you use, and you can see where savings can be made. There's the Australian Water Efficiency Labelling and Standards Scheme, which requires products such as shower heads, toilets, washing machines, dishwashers, taps and flow controllers to be rated and labelled for the water efficiency. So this rating helps you make a bit of an informed choice for your budget. The water consumption also influences the energy consumption for appliances that use hot water, such as dishwashers. So whilst lower water use is better, you need to watch out that it doesn't compromise the appliance's effectiveness. If you look at that URL there, the www.waterrating.gov.au, that's the home for this scheme, and you can have a look at different appliances on there. With a hot water system, there's just some easy, quick wins that you can make to save water, especially if you're building from scratch. Put the hot water taps as close as possible to the hot water source so that you're minimizing the waste whilst waiting for the hot to come through. I'm sure everyone goes into the shower and waits for the cold water to go down the drain before the hot comes through. If you can get that hot water tank right next to the shower taps, then there's less pipe for that cold water to have to come through, and you've saved a load of water really easily, and energy to heat that water up again. So grey water, there's a lot of considerations to take into account with grey water. This is quite a simple guide. We're not talking here about black water, which is from the toilet and nappy washing. And the kitchen sink is the grey area in between black and grey water, because you're putting potentially meat residue and oils and fats down the kitchen sink, and that creates an absolute nightmare with you have to process all that before you can use it in the garden. Grey water is literally the hand basin, shower, laundry, where you're not putting real nasties. It needs careful planning and essentially to be free flow into the garden, because if you let it sit for more than 24 hours, you can accumulate pathogens in it. So this is, like I was saying before, can be a significant change to your habits. And what it does, when you start looking at how you can use this water, you need to, or you start wanting to analyze what kind of cleaning products you use. So the problem goes upstream. You know, it keeps going backwards upstream to looking at what you're actually going to put down that sink in the first place. So you don't want any hazardous or harmful chemicals if you can help it. And have a look at the stuff you're already using and find out how eco-friendly it is. These pictures show simple systems that you can set up and display some simple features of a grey water system. So the one on the left there is a sink, the usual U-tube, and it goes down into a pipe, sometimes on the outside of the house, which makes it really easy to change yourself. But you can install a T-piece that lets you divert the grey water when you want it and put it down the stormwater, put it down the sewage pipe when you don't want it in the garden. So it's if you've got a problem with your grey water system, you can turn it off and just have it go to sewage. So yeah, the pipe just literally goes downhill all the way. You don't want any U's in that pipe, like as in places where the water can sit. It needs to free flow all the way through the pipe into the garden on a downhill trajectory. And then when it reaches the garden, the pipe in the middle there, the black pipe, is an ag pipe. You can get these with and without slots in it. So if you want to take it a long distance before using the water, you'd use the pipe that doesn't have slots in it. And then when you get to the trees where you want to use it, use the pipe with slots in it and it'll leak out, no problem. And then the one on the right is drip line, and it's colored purple so that you know it's grey water, and you can instantly tell that it's not town water, fresh water supply. It's actually grey water. So you can put it through drip line and have it go to your fruit trees. There's a couple of rules here. So you don't want to use it on veggies. Any woody plants, it's great with, because the potential harmful stuff in grey water does not go up the woody trunk into the leaves and the fruit. With something like lettuce, like fresh green veggies and leaves, the water goes all the way into the leaves, and then that's what you're eating, and you're potentially going to get nasties in it if it hasn't been processed by the soil biology. It's absolutely perfect for ornamentals and trees, even fruit trees, and it's in a perfect world, you'd be discharging it through a leaky pipe under the layer of mulch. You want the water to come into contact with soil biology as soon as possible. The soil biology generally takes care of it and leaves no harmful stuff that'll end up poisoning anybody. If you let it get exposed at the surface, if you've got kids or pets and it goes into their mouth, you're open to all sorts of problems. So when we're talking about gutters and rainwater harvesting, what we're really talking about is water tanks and the whole water tank system. And the first choice you have to make when you're choosing a water tank is deciding whether that's going to supply the house, the garden, or both. And that obviously affects, when you're doing a water audit, how much storage you'll need for the tanks, etc., etc. Any water that's destined for a tank needs to be as clean as you can possibly make it. Maintaining that system is a lot easier than cleaning out the inside of a tank. You can actually die from going inside a water tank in the first place because of gases that can build up in there without you knowing. So yes, essential that you keep the water going into it really clean. So first up, we try and keep the detritus out of the gutters and use gutter guard. And below the gutter, you can use a leaf diverter. So the water passes through the leaf diverter and the leaves just blow off the surface of it. When it's gone through the leaf diverter or out the gutter, It's coming down this pipe on the horizontal here. It goes into a first flush device. These are fantastic at getting the bulk detritus out of the water. If you think about, it's not rained for a couple of weeks, there's loads of build up on the roof, a few leaves knocking about. Then it rains, a good rain, 20 mil. So loads of water's coming down through this pipe. It's washing all of that detritus that's built up in the first initial flush of rain. So that comes down this pipe and flows straight to the bottom. And the initial, ideally 20 litres of water collects in this bottom section containing all the rubbish. By the time it's filled up to this level, clean water is now coming down this pipe, and that gets diverted off the horizontal into the water tank. You can put a little tap on the bottom of your first flush device here, or this one's probably got a dripper on it. Some of them drip continuously, and the rain falling is obviously harder than the drip, and so it fills up. But when the rain stops, it just all drips out empty back into the stormwater pipe down below. Another essential feature of a water tank is the volume of water that's going in. Once the tank is full, the same volume of water is going to come out, which can be really significant, and people really underestimate the volume of water coming out of the tank once it's full. They think, oh yeah, I'll just put an open pipe and leave it go on the lawn. But when it's rushing out of the end of a pipe in a concentrated way like that, it can easily erode whatever's downstream. So a good place to put water tanks is on, everyone's got one of them dark, unused sides of their house. So if you've got a choice, that's a great place to put them. And the water that goes off the tee into the water tank, tanks are usually supplied with this basket that collects any leads that have got into that system that have come in later on. And so you need to be able to reach that sieve and empty it out once in a while. And what that means is, generally speaking, you need space to put a ladder quite close to that so you can easily reach it and unblock everything. Everything needs, ideally you do it after every rain event, but I can tell you from experience that doesn't generally happen. I set myself an alarm on my phone to go and clean everything out once every 6 months. That basket also stops just general debris getting in the tank, and also wildlife. You don't want dead things floating around in the top of your tank, poisoning your water. There are all sorts of shapes and sizes of tanks. Once you know what volume you want, you don't have to buy one tank. It actually is beneficial to have multiple tanks so that you've got redundancy. If one tank leaks, you've still got some water available. I've got 4, just most of them, well, 3 of them are fairly small, just dotted around the house where I can fit them in. And then I've got that big one that I said before, the 10,000 litre one. They come very narrow, like 750 mil wide, or so you can fit them on a path down the side of the house. It's not very good to place them it's not done to place them against the boundary of your property. There needs to be a path around the edge, between the edge of the property and the water tank. So the perfect place is kind of under the eaves if you're going to put them right next to the house. You can put tanks under the house. So these are 2 large plastic ones that I installed. They come in all sorts of materials as well. Stainless steel is recyclable for the life of the product. So you can use it for other things after it's finished being a water tank. Plastic, generally speaking, has a lifespan of about 10 to 15 years, and then it starts off-gassing and breaking down. So it's up to your choice. It's whatever you're comfortable with is the choice you go with. It's quite a hard decision and a very personal one. The one under the house there with the bladder, yeah, they can fit in very narrow spaces underneath your home, in fact. I get nervous about these because, to me, the bladder, a couple of thousand litres leaking out underneath my house is not ideal. But if that's the only space you've got, that might be the only option you're presented with. The 2 on the right there, the olive barrel and the intermediate bulk containers, are perfect for if you're renting or in some kind of temporary situation. They're easily movable. You can put a tap on the olive barrel, and so you can, that one is mine that I've got at home that I used to use for my chicken water. So I used to just, right next to the chicken tank, that's the chicken coop roof. And yeah, you just get the water from there rather than going all the way to the house for it. And people do all sorts of nifty things with the intermediate bulk containers, and you can store all kinds of volume and move them about if you don't like it or you want to change it. If you want to work out how big the tank needs to be, Renew have a great tool on their website called the Tankulator. Most commercial tank manufacturers have some kind of a calculator on their website. Some of them are great, some of them are a bit too simplistic. Your tank doesn't have to stick out. You can use trellis and plants to disguise a prominent tank. You just want to make sure, like I said before, you can put a ladder up so you can access it for maintenance purposes. It's not, particularly with the sort of more rectangular shaped ones, you don't want to be leaning a ladder up against them. Round ones not too bad, but the rectangle ones are kind of unstable when they're nearly empty. So you need to be able to stand on something high enough to get hold of that the basket and maintain the inflow pipes to the tank. So we'll move to the garden. If you want to save water in the garden, native plants are absolutely the #1 option. Really low maintenance for time-poor gardeners as well. Councils produce lists of suitable plants. I know that my own council has got one, so check out lists of plants for your local area. I go bushwalking and find out what the plants are that look great in my local bushy areas, and go to nurseries and try and buy them and replicate that in my own place. This picture shows something quite subtle, but having trees and shrubs and ground covers, all layers of the forest, give you this cooling effect around the house. And so you're reducing the heat buildup around the house. And the shade provided by the taller trees helps the lower trees grow, believe it or not. Most plants really don't like a good 40-degree Australian summer's day. And so those dappled shade plants, dappled shade trees, have a great benefit to the lower plants. Placing garden beds on contours wherever possible is fantastic. If you put them at, the water obviously flows the quickest it can down a given hill, which is straight down the slope, perpendicular to a contour. So if you put your garden beds, the garden beds in this picture here are looking straight down the contour. So if you're on a contour, you're not walking uphill, you're not walking downhill, you're walking along a dead flat path. When the water flows down the hill and hits one of these garden beds, it moves left and right. And so essentially what it's doing is being forced to slow down and think about where it's going. And so that slowing down helps it to sink in. And so the plants in the garden bed get a good soaking rather than it just running straight off the edge and round and gone. Each of these beds sort of flows into the next one. So it hits the first one up there, around the side, hits into that, around the side, comes into the last one, and then off, if it gets that far. Using the contours of your landscape creates a really natural looking landscape rather than all these straight lines and angles you see on modern properties these days. I get a lot of comments when people come to my place saying that it looks natural and sort of organic. The type of soil you have makes all the difference as well. Clay soil doesn't let water soak in easily. Sandy soil just drains water through really efficiently, the exact opposite. And organic matter is the solution to both of these problems. It essentially makes your soil more like a sponge. The tiny little bits of wood in organic matter, and when you've grabbed hold of a piece of really rotting timber and you squeeze it and water sort of seeps out of it, that's what you want. Tiny millions of little bits of that all through your soil is what you're after. And so that soaks up the water. The biggest reservoir that you can possibly have is the actual soil itself on your property rather than the tanks. So if you can improve your soil, it does amazing things. No-dig garden beds are a really great way of creating a fantastic soil where there was previously lawn or compacted dirt. And these pictures show my front lawn. I just completed the house reno. There'd been skips bins on there for like 3 years, really compacted, hard, awful stuff. I just cardboarded the whole area, marked out where I wanted the paths in bricks, and then started layering organic matter on top of the cardboard. And so I'm using all sorts of stuff like lucerne compost, mushroom compost, anything I could get my hands on, really. And you're making an in situ compost pile. And the last layer that went on is this really thick layer of lucerne. And then when you want to go, the last picture shows the plants once they're in. You just part the mulch and put a few handfuls of potting mix into the mulch and then plant your plants into that. And by the time everything's broken down, that'll be nice soil and your plants are big enough to access all that goodness. Every year, try to mulch the same patch heavily, at least 10 to 15 centimeters, and mix up the mulch material. So you might use decomposed wood chip one year, well-rotted horse manure the following year, mushroom compost the year after. That helps get this diversity of soil life into the soil straight away. Using anything that isn't a noxious weed as mulch. So with my trees, I just chop the prunings up into little pieces and leave them under the trees. I don't bother taking it to the compost. I grow living mulch in the form of dense ground cover. And a couple of examples of that are baby sunrose, strawberries, pumpkins, and native violets. Another sort of not often used tip is make effective use of what you already have in the landscape. So if there's a wet, boggy area, is that a good place for a pond? This is where the two photos there, the top one shows where my pond is back in the day. It was just a huge rock outcrop and water collected there when it rained. We'd get frogs and tadpoles. They'd have to grow up really quickly before the sun evaporated everything and it went dry. So I just bricked around it and filled it in a bit more so that I made it hold water so that the water's more of a permanent feature. You can link ponds up in chains through your garden with spoon drains. If you have a particular sort of water course going through your land, you can slow the water down with successive ponds going through that. And the pond itself is probably the single biggest factor in improving biodiversity in the garden. Insects love the pond. And as I said before with the water audit, changing your habits to use maybe an outdoor sink can help water the garden rather than going straight to the stormwater waste. So it makes you think about the kinds of jobs you do. Like I said, washing the spuds outside. Can they be done inside? Washing the potatoes in the kitchen, can they be done outside in your outdoor sink and water the plants at the same time? You can create structures around your house that, such as eaves, awnings, fences, external blinds and trellises. Use natural elements such as trees and shrubs to help those along. So you can see here they've got a pergola outside their living room with a grapevine growing up it. The beauty of that is it's a deciduous vine. So in summer, it's full of leaves and stops the sun going in the window. Lovely shady spot. But in winter, all the leaves drop off and let the light and heat in. These are great for either north or western facing facades. So where you get your worst sun exposure. This is the western side of my own house. So I built the pergola with the grapevine on the top. Loads of plants, loads of other plants creating that sort of foresty feel, like all the layers of the forest. And I've got the water tank up against the actual house wall. So that everything's blocking the sun from hitting the house. And the plants are transpiring all the time and cooling down the air in that pocket. And so it's heaps cooler now. I've got two bedrooms and the bathroom down that side of the house. And so it's a lot, the air coming in through the windows is a lot cooler than it used to be. So you can use that to climate control the inside of your house. Another good point about that is it actually provides a windbreak so that excessive wind is not battering the house either. In winter, excessive wind just increases the rate at which heat is lost from your home. So they're kind of insulating the outside of your house. And then this photo is an example of, again, the layers of the forest to provide this dappled shade that provides a more comfortable living environment for the house and also stops the other plants from being scorched by the summer sun. So that massive eucalypt is on the western side of the house. And so it shades a good portion of that and the front garden for most of the hot day. Green roofs are another excellent solution, but require they're great for insulation, cooling, transpiration effects, where there would otherwise be heat coming from radiant tiles or reflective material. But they really need engineering solutions because the weight of all that on your roof is a problem for existing houses that are maybe not built to deal with it. So this is getting back to what we touched on earlier about if you've got excessive rain falling and you've got problems with it coming into the house, you can redirect heavy water flow around your garden and hopefully not through your house. Swales, French drains, and spoon drains are really simple solutions to moving water around the place. These are swales that I dug on the back lawn. On the top photo, the blue arrows show the path of the water, show the path that the water used to take. So from left to right, and on the right is a cliff. There'd be a huge pond on the edge just before the cliff, and then it'd pour off the back. There's houses down below us, and they used to must be inundated with water at certain times of the year. I marked out contours, which are the sort of pinky looking bricks and twigs that I used to mark out the contours on the lawn. So they're not straight across the lawn, they're slightly curved. And then I dug holes, like the swale is actually the hole you dig along the contour so that water fills up that hole and sinks in. And one swale leaks into the other. So if water fills up the first swale, overflows that into the second one, and so on. And so you're creating this, again, the champagne tower effect, moving all the way down the lawn. The other beauty of this is now my food forest, and the fact that I've dug a ditch, which I then fill with wood chip that I'll show you in a minute. I dug the ditch and put the soil on the garden bed. So the garden bed is raised, and then there's a ditch below it. So the total distance between the bottom of the ditch and the top of the mound is about 400 mils, or nearly half a meter. And that creates the perfect growing conditions for fruit trees, which hate waterlogged roots. So the place never fills up with water, but the wood chip soaks up the water like a sponge and keeps everything damp. So there's the swales filled with wood chip, and you can see the mounds a bit more clearly. The level spreader at the top here is water comes off my driveway. I've got a grid at the bottom of the driveway in front of the garage. And so all the water that falls on that comes down a pipe without leaking anywhere and goes into this level spreader. And the reason I didn't want to put it on the rest of the garden is because I've got edibles higher up the food chain. And the detritus off the driveway could contain anything like oil from the car, for example. And so the first garden bed at the top, I just plant non-edibles in, and that is my biofilter. So the water gets filtered out before it goes into any of these swales. And then the bottom photo is what it looks like, or roughly what it looks like now. It actually looks more of a jungle than that at the moment. But yeah, loads of fruit trees and everything growing together, and a really successful way of growing fruit trees. And then this last photo is the level spreader in action. So you can see all the holes pouring all at the same time. They're on dead level again. It's gone through the non-edible bed here into the wood chip, and it's rained that hard that it's actually filled the first swale up, and that's in the process of leaking into the second swale. I've never actually seen it fill the second swale up, so either it's soaked right in or it's all just underground and I never see it. French drains and spoon drains encourage, French drains encourage seepage water. So they allow small rainfalls even to soak in, but excessive rain gets moved away to wherever you want the drain to go. And spoon drains encourage surface water to move around your house downslope. So if you look at that top picture, that's a French drain. It's essentially just a hole like I dug the swale. You line it with landscaping cloth, put a bit of gravel in the bottom, and then put a pipe with holes in it on top of the gravel, on top of like maybe, I don't know, 10 mil of gravel, so it's off the floor. The pipe has holes in it and it's covered by a sock so that plant roots and the small bits of gravel can't get in the pipe and block it up. Then you fill the rest of the ditch up with gravel, like completely covering the pipe, as you can see at the top part of that picture. And then you can actually wrap landscaping cloth around all that, or you can just, a slightly less good solution is just to put soil over the top of that and whatever you want, grass or plants. But you can see that the water falling on that will percolate through the gravel. Small amounts of water just keep going into the floor, but huge amounts of water fill up that drain, the drain channel, and the pipe is the point of least resistance because there's nothing in the pipe, and excess water goes out along the pipe to wherever you want it to go. And so if you put these on a slight downslope, you can redirect heavy rainfalls around your house and to the downslope side. And then you can see the spoon drain there, which is just surface water flow, so a different solution. But small volumes will soak in between either the pebbles or the bricks, but large volumes can get away and go somewhere different. Nowadays, you can get all sorts of permeable surfaces. You can use lawn, garden beds, gravel, paving, fake grass. They're all permeable. It's about being creative with use of products designed to let the water soak into the landscape rather than letting it run off. So if you can use a porous solution rather than a impermeable solution, that's a lot better. You can even get permeable asphalt and concrete, so it looks like concrete, but really water's getting through it and into the landscape. And another couple of novel solutions to save water and try and green your property. Wicking beds are fantastic for time-poor gardeners. They need to be installed on a level pad, so they're really good for areas of concrete that you want to try and green up a bit. You can get all sorts of solutions, either homemade, purchased, or off the shelf. These are ones that I've built myself out of intermediate bulk containers, cut one in half. You've got 2 meter squared garden beds. You create a reservoir in the bottom half. The plant pots full of sand act as wicks so that they wick the water up. You fill this, you line the top section with landscaping cloth and fill it with soil, and the plants grow in the soil, obviously. The plants transpire water out of their leaves and suck water in through their roots, so they act like a little pump, and that promotes the wicking effect, that the sand helps the water wick up and into the soil, where the roots can get what they want. And so when you've filled it up with the soil, the plants are drinking exactly what they want rather than you trying to guess what to put on from the top. And there's hardly any water evaporation, so they save water. And this is a commercial solution from Water Ups. And you can see they supply a surround, a little reservoir, and then they supply these sort of modules that you can clip together and create any shape you want, really. You can make your own surround with wood if you want and make them any shape you want. You fill the legs up with perlite and they act as the wick, whereas I had sand in pots before. And then you put the landscaping cloth and fill it up with soil. This pipe here is so that you can put a hose in it and fill the reservoir up rather than just tipping water on the surface of the soil. They usually have, which I've forgotten to mention, I can't see one on these diagrams actually, but there's an overflow hole at the top of the reservoir. So level with the top of that module will be a hole in the side, and excess water just leaks out of the garden bed onto the floor. And so when you're filling it up with this pipe, you know it's full because it's leaking outside. A rain garden is another really great way of managing high stormwater flows. This picture is a great diagram of what goes on sort of subsurface. So you're basically digging a massive hole and filling it with very permeable material. Some people just make them literally with that. But if you've got really large volumes of water and you want excess to go somewhere different, you can put a pipe in as shown there. So it pipes the excess off, a bit like a French drain, to where it can go and not cause any harm. But you can grow plants that love dry weather, but then don't mind a good soaking and a drowning once in a while. There's a whole suite of plants that you can get that suit rain gardens really well. This next picture shows one in action. This is similar to the water tanks in a way, in that the water coming in is down a channel, high energy, lots of water. You don't want the channel going into the rain garden to erode, so you line it with pebbles. That stops everything moving as it's going into the main bed. It fills up the main bed, but then once it's full, water's got to go somewhere. And so they put an outflow channel and line that with pebbles because the same water is going to go out that came in. And then it goes to the street and off down the stormwater system. But at least most of the water gets soaked in and into the landscape in this great design. And this is another kind of level spreader. So I was doing the pipe with the holes, but this one's really fantastic. The stormwater comes into that trough. The trough's full of pebbles to stop stop insects breeding in it and stuff, I hope. And it overflows the trough evenly all along the garden bed. So a good way to slow the water down and distribute it evenly. And then finally, we'll talk about fire-wise gardens. This fire management is extremely property specific. The shape of the landscape really heavily influences the type of fire hazard you have. So it depends whether you're on the cliff edge or the valley floor. Fire races up cliffs and up steep slopes, and so you'll have a completely different scenario high up as you would lower down. You can use fire retardant plants spaced apart to reduce the fact that embers pass from plant to plant. Using non-flammable materials to do the heavy landscaping part, such as brick or stone rather than wood chip. And maintaining that and keeping it clear of leaf litter, drop branches. Again, that water tank maintenance with cleaning your gutters is handy. And keeping it all hydrated is like having lots of organic matter in the soil so that it stays moist and doesn't ignite so easily. And so whilst you can have a fire sort of retardant garden, everything burns eventually in the hottest of fires. But some trees resist until they dry out, and deciduous trees are a good example of that. This is a photo from the ABC that I saw after the massive bushfires in 2019. And it's in Victoria somewhere. You can see that they've cleared around the house to reduce the leaf litter around the house, but everything burnt apart from the mulberry tree in the middle, which is credited with saving the house. So that mulberry tree would have been transpiring like mad because it would have got really hot and created its own little microclimate, I'm supposing, that would have saved the house and made the house less vulnerable. There are lists of trees published by people who have first-hand experience of how they fare in bushfire conditions as well. Here's a list of resources that you can use, including that list of fire retardant plants that we just talked about. And thank you for listening.
Thanks so much for that, Mike. It was really, really interesting and brilliant how many examples you've used from your own place. Yeah, very cool to see. We do have a few questions and we'll get to those very soon. There are just a couple of things that I'd like to mention beforehand. So tonight's webinar is part of a series of online and in-person workshops throughout the year called Living Lightly. So Bass Coast Shire Council are partnering with Bass Coast Adult Learning, South Gippsland Shire Council and many other community organisations to cover topics such as energy, food, gardening, and circular economy. You can register for free for Thursday's webinar on Introduction to Circular Economy now. The link to that will be in the chat, and to register for our other webinars as well, and other workshops. And also, Bass Coast Shire Council residents can access the Solar Savers program. So Solar Savers is a local government initiative that helps households and businesses install quality and affordable rooftop solar. They also have batteries, heat pump hot water systems, and they're sort of pretty consistently expanding what they offer. So if you're looking to install solar, batteries, or electrify your home, you can check Solar Savers out. There'll be a link to them in the chat as well. So we will get to the questions now. So if you do have any other questions, please continue to put them into the Q&A function, and we'll get to as many as we can. The first question that I have says, "Hi, great presentation from your personal experience. Thank you. My water tank installer came back a year after I installed a tank and said I needed to clean out the silt buildup every 12 months or so. Is that true or necessary, or just a bit of over-servicing?"
Yeah, the key there is just basically get on top of your tank and have a look in it. Like I said, the more you can clean out that the water as it's going into the tank, or keep it clean, the way better that is. I can't stress that enough. Cleaning a tank out is not a nice business. I would just have a look and see if it's a problem. Sometimes it won't even be a problem. Depends what you've got in there. It also, if you've got trees overhanging your house, like the corner of my house where that huge tree is just full of junk all the time. And so I need to clean that one out a lot more often than the other one on the opposite side, which barely has anything in it. So it's yeah, horses for courses.
Yeah, that makes sense. It would be very different for different houses. The next question we've got is, grey water irrigation or runoff okay to use for watering of native animals or in bird baths, or is that best to be rainwater only?
Yeah, you definitely don't want grey water sat still for any length of time. It needs to run straight into a garden and not pool anywhere. So it will, like if you've ever washed your hands into a bucket and it's that sort of grey, soapy, gunky water, that collects pathogens over time. It's not nice stuff. It doesn't get clean. So it needs to go straight to meet the soil biology that'll take care of it. So yeah, use rainwater only.
Yep, thank you. The next question we have, "Hi, I've been told if you place cardboard under your mulch, you should avoid cardboard with lots of inks, dyes, or glues. Does it really make a difference if you place lots of different mulch on top?"
This is personal. Some people hate. I don't put any cardboard with huge amounts of dyes and glues, or the glues not so bad unless it's the dyes that are the problem. They're full of heavy metals and nasty stuff. So once that doesn't really go anywhere, it stays in your soil. Hopefully over time, the soil biology will convert it into something else, but essentially you're polluting your garden beds. I just use the brown cardboard as much as I can. I was watching something on soil the other day, and the glue that holds brown cardboard together, a woman called Elaine Ingham, who's a soil scientist in the US, hugely knowledgeable. She said the bacteria in your soil actually love the glue in cardboard, and so they flock to the cardboard and eat that, and then the worms chew through the whole lot. So brown cardboard is fantastic, but it's the inks and dyes. Some people don't want it, other people are not bothered about it. It's your personal preference, but I would avoid it if you want truly organic soil.
Yeah, I guess it probably depends too. You can get the sort of, like, in our council we call it nude cardboard, which is the brown cardboard that can still have inks and dyes on it, but then you have the like cereal box cardboard that has an actual like plastic coating, I think.
Yeah.
Want to avoid that, I would imagine.
The worst ones I've found are like buying tools from Bunnings or something. That cardboard, the shinier it is, the worse it is.
Yeah.
It's the shiny stuff you want to avoid.
Yeah. Thank you. Another question was climate control of your house using plants. What a great idea. But I was always told to avoid having too many trees or plants close to the house in case the roots or excess water gets under the house and does damage over the long term. What do you think?
That photo I showed that looked down the west side of my house with the pergola and all the bushes. There used to be a mango tree there. There were roots that started my whole that was right at the beginning of the whole sort of house reno, garden, everything. There were roots like 6 inches diameter going under there was hardly any foundations to our house because it was built in 1958. They'd literally just built it on soil. And there were 6-inch diameter roots going under the house. So certain trees, mainly the tropical ones, mulberries are bad for it. Their roots are extremely invasive and go anywhere they can to get all the water. So I had loads of mango roots under the foundations and were actually subsiding the corner of the house. So I had to dig the mango tree right out, dig a massive hole under that part of the house and fill it with concrete to stop it falling in, essentially. Certain plants are great for certain things like that. That pergola is just a grapevine, so they're not excessively invasive. If I was planting a row of trees there, I'd be choosing my tree species carefully. Citrus trees are really shallow rooted and not invasive, so you can put citrus trees. Yeah, again, you just got to do the research on what you put in there and what it does. If you know you're going to have a problem with root damage, choose trees that don't have those kinds of roots.
Someone said mangoes versus root damage. I might choose the mangoes if I'm not there too long.
We never had mangoes off it either.
Yeah.
So frustrating.
Yeah. The next question that we have is why aren't councils using the idea of wicking or rain gardens to recycle stormwater runoff instead of sending it down the drain? Sounds too logical to reuse the runoff instead of wasting it. And maybe I can answer that question, or at least in part. I know there are some developments within Bass Coast, mainly on Cows, the ones that I can think of, where they are using rain gardens and have incorporated that into the stormwater system. But that also does mean increased maintenance as well. I don't know if you have anything that you wanted to add there, Mike?
They're kind of a project that requires, they're not just a quick fix. They're like you're analysing the whole channel of water and again where it goes to after that. And so you're putting heaps of infrastructure in, but they are, when they do them, they're great. I know around where I've lived I live in the New South Wales near Sydney, but I used to live on the Central Coast. They were making massive rain gardens there. There's a few right near me here, near me here at home. They do them, but in very specific situations, I think, where they're not going to cost heaps of money or have a way better benefit than doing any other solution.
Yeah.
Another problem with them is possibly mosquitoes and stuff as well. If the water hangs around for that little bit too long, you're just breeding bad stuff.
Yeah. Another question, are resilient trees a real thing?
Yes. Like I said, everything burns eventually, but if you think about deciduous trees, they're full of liquid. Like eucalypts are full of oil and they burn real easy. Deciduous trees are generally like really quite succulent wood. If you've ever tried to rip a branch off a deciduous tree, you have to curl it round for half an hour before it breaks. They're full of water, so that all that water needs to evaporate before it'll burn. And so they just take longer. So if it's a low temperature burn, it's going to take ages to get through all that water and then burn off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've got a row, lily pillies are another good tree. I've got a row of lily pillies facing the bush part of my block so that hopefully they protect the rest of the garden.
Yeah, great. I think that's all the questions that we have A couple of people saying great presentation and thank you. So with that, we might wrap up. Thanks so much everyone for your time tonight. I hope that this webinar has been informative and has helped answer some of the questions you might have had about how to integrate sustainable water systems into your design and create a garden that's climate resilient and water resilient. A big thanks to you, Mike, for lending your expertise and experience for the evening. And thanks to Andy from Renew for the behind the scenes support as well. Before we close out tonight, I'd just like to remind everyone that the next workshop in the Living Lightly series is this Thursday, the 27th of Feb at 6 p.m. The Introduction to Circular Economy webinar. And there are also lots more workshops, both in person and online, coming up in March, covering various topics as well. The link to register for any of those will be in the chat. And a final reminder that this webinar has been recorded and it will be posted on the CAP, the Community Action Portal, in coming weeks. So you'll be able to find the recording of this webinar and all of our other webinars there as well. That's everything for tonight. Thanks again for coming along and hope to see you on Thursday.
Thank you.